The roar of the swollen Gila River nearly drowned out Lily Eastwood's screams as the raging current dragged her deeper into its churning depths. The spring floods of 1878 had transformed the normally placid waterway outside Clifton, Arizona territory, into a rampaging monster that showed no mercy to those caught in its grip. Nathan Xavier saw the flash of her cornflower blue dress from atop his chestnut mare, Pepper. He'd been tracking a stray calf along the riverbank when the sound of a woman's terrified cries cut through the constant rush of water. Without hesitation, he spurred Pepper toward the riverbank, leapt from the saddle, and tore off his gun belt. "Hold on," he shouted, though he doubted she could hear him over the water's roar. Nathan kicked off his boots and dove into the churning current, fighting against the powerful undertow that threatened to drag him downstream alongside the struggling woman. Lily's lungs burned for air as she fought to keep her head above the muddy water. Her skirts, now sodden anchors, pulled her downward with each passing second. The wagon crossing had seemed safe enough until the riverbed suddenly gave way beneath the wheels, pitching her into the flood while her driver barely escaped with the frightened horses. She caught a glimpse of movement, someone swimming toward her with powerful strokes. Hope surged briefly before another wave crashed over her head, sending her back beneath the surface. Nathan pushed himself harder, his muscles screaming as he battled the current. He could see her struggling less now, a dangerous sign. With one final surge, he reached her just as she slipped beneath the surface. His hand plunged into the water, finding hers in the murky depths. Their fingers touched, then clasped. In that instant, despite the danger, despite the roaring waters, something electric passed between them. Nathan pulled her to him, wrapping a strong arm around her waist as he fought to bring them both to the surface. Lily gasped for air as her head broke through, coughing violently as water spilled from her lungs. She felt the solid strength of the stranger holding her, his arm like iron around her midsection. "I've got you," he said close to her ear, his voice somehow cutting through the river's din. "Don't fight me. Let me do the work." She nodded weakly, too exhausted to do anything else. Together, they moved slowly toward the shore, Nathan using every ounce of his strength to fight the current while keeping them both afloat. As they neared the bank, hands reached down to help local ranchers and cowboys who'd heard the commotion. When they finally collapsed onto the muddy shore, Lily lay on her side, retching river water as Nathan sat beside her, his chest heaving with exertion. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, rivulets of water streaming down his tanned face. "Thank you," she managed between coughs, her eyes meeting his. They were a startling shade of green, she realized, like sun-dappled leaves in summer. "What kind of man would I be if I'd let you drown?" Nathan replied, his breathing still labored. He studied her face, porcelain skin now smudged with river mud, wide blue eyes, and dark hair that had mostly escaped its pins during her ordeal. Despite her bedraggled state, she was undeniably beautiful. "Miss Eastwood, Miss Eastwood." A portly man in a waistcoat came running along the bank, his face flushed with exertion and panic. "Oh, thank the Lord you're alive, Mr. Higgins," she acknowledged weakly as Nathan helped her to sit up. "I couldn't hold the horses, miss. They spooked something terrible when the wagon started to tip. I'm so sorry." The man wrung his hands in distress. "It's all right," Lily assured him, though her voice trembled. "No one could have predicted the crossing would give way." Nathan stood, offering his hand to help her up. Again, that strange sensation passed between them as their palms met. He steadied her as she rose on shaky legs, her soaked dress clinging uncomfortably to her frame. "Nathan Xavier," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "Foreman at the Rockingham." "Lily Eastwood," she replied, suddenly conscious of her appearance. "I've just arrived from Boston. My uncle owns the Mercantile in Clifton." "Old Jim Eastwood is your uncle?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "He's been talking about his niece coming west for months now." "Yes. Well, this isn't quite the arrival I had planned." She attempted a smile despite her chattering teeth. Nathan shrugged off his sodden vest and draped it over her shoulders. It was wet but offered some protection from the growing breeze. "You need dry clothes and a warm fire, Miss Eastwood." "Clifton's still 4 miles away." He turned to Mr. Higgins. "Can you ride ahead and tell Jim what happened? I'll bring Miss Eastwood on my horse." The driver nodded vigorously. "Right away. I'll fetch the doctor, too." As Higgins hurried off to where his team had finally calmed, Nathan led Lily to where Pepper waited patiently beneath a cottonwood tree. The mare nickered softly as they approached. "She's gentle," Nathan assured her, helping Lily mount. The task proved difficult with her waterlogged skirts, but eventually she settled in the saddle, side saddle as propriety demanded despite their circumstances. Nathan took Pepper's reins and began leading them toward town, his boots squelching with each step. "So Boston," he said conversationally, clearly trying to keep her mind off her ordeal. "What brings a city lady all the way to the Arizona Territory?" Lily watched his broad shoulders as he walked ahead of her, struck by the quiet confidence in his movements. "My parents died last year influenza. Uncle Jim is my only remaining family. He offered me a home and said he could use help with his books." Nathan glanced back at her, genuine sympathy in his eyes. "I'm sorry about your parents." "Thank you," she said softly. "It's been difficult. I thought perhaps a fresh start in new surroundings might help." "Well, you certainly made an entrance," he said with a slight smile. "Folks will be talking about it for months." Despite everything, Lily found herself laughing, a small, fragile sound but genuine. "I suppose they will." By the time they reached the outskirts of Clifton, word had spread about the incident at the river. People lined the main street, watching as Nathan led the horse carrying the soaked newcomer toward the Mercantile. Jim Eastwood, a silver-haired man with kind eyes, waited anxiously on the porch. "Lily," he called, rushing forward as Nathan helped her dismount. "My God, child," when Higgins told me what happened, he wrapped her in a fierce embrace, heedless of her wet clothes. "I'm all right, Uncle Jim," she assured him, returning his hug. "Thanks to Mr. Xavier." Jim turned to Nathan, grasping his hand firmly. "I don't have words enough to thank you, son." "No thanks needed," Nathan replied simply. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not anyone would have succeeded," Jim countered. "Please come inside. Both of you need to warm up." The Mercantile was warm and smelled of coffee, tobacco, and the myriad other goods stacked on shelves that reached the ceiling. A pot-bellied stove radiated heat in the corner. Jim quickly ushered Lily toward the back staircase that led to the living quarters above. "Martha's drawn you a hot bath upstairs," he told her. "Dr. Peterson will be by shortly to check on you." Lily nodded gratefully but paused at the foot of the stairs, turning back to Nathan, who stood dripping on the plank floor. "Mr. Xavier, I don't know how to properly thank you." He shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, his hat in his hands. "Just glad I was riding by when I was, Miss Eastwood. Please call me Lily." The words slipped out before she could consider their propriety. A small smile curved his lips. "Lily then, and I'm Nathan." Something in the way he said her name sent a flutter through her chest that had nothing to do with her near drowning. She held his gaze a moment longer before the housekeeper's appearance at the top of the stairs broke the spell. "Coming, Martha," she called. Then with one last smile at Nathan, she ascended the stairs, leaving wet footprints behind her. Jim fetched a towel from behind the counter and handed it to Nathan. "Dry off some, son." "I've got coffee heating, and I believe this calls for something stronger to go with it." Later that evening, after the doctor had confirmed that Lily had suffered no serious harm beyond bruises and exhaustion, she sat wrapped in a quilt before the fireplace in her uncle's sitting room. The events of the day kept replaying in her mind, especially the moment Nathan's hand had found hers beneath the water. She couldn't explain the sensation that had passed between them, like a current stronger than the river itself. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Martha, her uncle's housekeeper, entered with a steaming cup of tea. "How are you feeling, Miss Lily?" the older woman asked, setting the cup beside her. "Better, thank you." Lily smiled gratefully. "Just tired." Martha nodded approvingly. "That handsome cowboy who saved you came by again to check on you. Your uncle's talking with him downstairs." Lily's pulse quickened. "He did? I mean, that's very kind of him." Martha's knowing smile suggested she hadn't missed Lily's reaction. "Your uncle invited him to Sunday dinner. Said any man who saved his niece deserves a proper meal at least." After Martha left, Lily sat sipping her tea, contemplating this development. In Boston, her social circle had been full of well-educated, wealthy young men who spoke of art and literature. Yet none of them had ever made her heart race the way it had when Nathan Xavier simply said her name. 2 days later, sufficiently recovered from her ordeal, Lily helped her uncle in the mercantile. She discovered she enjoyed the work far more interesting than the sedate activities considered appropriate for young ladies in Boston society. Here, no one looked askance when she climbed a ladder to fetch inventory or helped unload a delivery wagon. The bell above the door jangled, and Lily looked up from the ledger she was updating. Nathan Xavier stepped inside, removing his hat in a smooth motion that spoke of ingrained manners. He'd cleaned up considerably since their first meeting, his dark hair neatly combed, his clothes fresh, though still the practical attire of a working cowboy. "Good morning," he greeted, eyes finding her immediately. "How are you feeling, Miss Eastwood?" "Much better, thank you." She closed the ledger, suddenly aware of her ink-stained fingers. "And please, I thought we'd agreed on Lily." He smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Lily, then. I'm glad to see you recovering so well." Jim emerged from the storeroom, breaking into a wide smile when he spotted Nathan. "Xavier, good to see you, son. Come to collect that order for the Rockingham." "Yes, sir. Mr. Moore needs those fence supplies today if possible." As Jim gathered the requested items, Lily found herself studying Nathan more closely. He couldn't be much older than her 22 years, perhaps 26 or 27. The sun had etched fine lines around his eyes, and his hands bore the calluses of honest labor. Unlike the soft-handed gentleman of Boston, everything about Nathan Xavier spoke of capability and strength. "I understand you're joining us for dinner tomorrow," she said, moving around the counter to stand nearer to him. "If that's still all right," he replied, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Of course it is. I'd like the chance to thank you properly. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I don't know many people here yet." Nathan relaxed visibly. "Then I'll look forward to it." When Jim returned with the supplies, Nathan paid for them, tipped his hat to Lily, and departed. She watched him through the window as he loaded the packages onto his wagon, the morning sun highlighting the breadth of his shoulders and the confident set of his stance. "He's a good man," Jim said, coming to stand beside her. "One of the best in these parts." Lily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She had only been in Clifton for a few days, yet already the ordered plans she'd made for her new life seemed to be shifting like sand beneath her feet. Sunday dinner proved to be a revelation. Nathan arrived promptly at 1 o'clock, freshly shaven and wearing a clean shirt with his best trousers. He'd brought a small gift, a book of poetry that he somewhat sheepishly admitted had belonged to his mother. "It's not new," he apologized as Lily unwrapped it. "But when you mentioned you enjoy reading, I thought you might like it." Lily ran her fingers over the leather cover, touched beyond words. "Wordsworth," she said softly. "This is perfect, thank you." Throughout the meal, Lily discovered that Nathan Xavier was far more than the taciturn cowboy he first appeared to be. Born in Texas, he'd come to Arizona 5 years earlier after serving briefly as a Texas Ranger. He spoke intelligently about cattle breeding, territorial politics, and even surprised her with his knowledge of literature, mostly self-taught through voracious reading, whenever he could find books. "My mother was a schoolteacher before she married my father," he explained as they sat on the porch after dinner, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the street. "She made sure I knew there was more to life than cows and horses." "She sounds wonderful," Lily said, imagining the woman who had raised this remarkable man. "She was." A shadow crossed his face. "Lost her and my father both to a fever when I was 17. That's when I joined the Rangers." Lily's heart ached for him. "We have that in common than losing our parents too soon." He nodded, his green eyes studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "It changes you, doesn't it? Makes you see life differently." "Yes," she agreed softly. "It makes you realize how precious time is, how quickly everything can change." In the weeks that followed, Nathan became a regular visitor to the Eastwood mercantile. Sometimes he had legitimate business. Other times, his excuses grew increasingly transparent. Jim watched their budding relationship with approving eyes, while town gossips speculated about the handsome cowboy's interest in the Eastern newcomer. Lily found herself looking forward to his visits with an anticipation that both thrilled and frightened her. Each time the bell above the door rang, her heart leapt with hope that it might be him. One afternoon in late May, Nathan arrived with an unusual request. "There's a community dance at the schoolhouse Saturday evening," he said, turning his hat in his hands. "I wondered if you might consider attending. With me." Lily's cheeks warmed. "I'd like that very much." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "I'll come by at 7 then." The night of the dance, Lily wore her best dress, a pale blue creation that brought out the color of her eyes. When Nathan arrived to escort her and Jim to the schoolhouse, his appreciative gaze made her blush to the roots of her hair. The schoolhouse had been transformed with paper decorations and lanterns. A three-piece band played lively tunes while couples whirled across the floor. Everyone welcomed Lily warmly, genuinely pleased that Jim Eastwood's niece had survived her dramatic arrival and seemed to be settling into their community. When Nathan led her onto the floor for their first dance, his hand at her waist felt both thrilling and somehow right, as though they had been dancing together for years instead of minutes. They moved well together, his natural grace belying his cowboy appearance. "You dance beautifully," she told him, surprised. He chuckled, the sound warming her from within. "Don't look so shocked. Cowboys aren't all clumsy oafs." "I never thought you were," she replied honestly. As the evening progressed, they shared more dances, conversed with neighbors, and gradually moved closer to each other with each passing hour. When the band struck up a slower waltz, Nathan's hand found the small of her back, guiding her to the floor once more. "I've been wanting to ask you something," he said as they moved to the gentle rhythm. "Yes." Her heart seemed to beat in time with the music, quick and light. "Would you consider riding out to Silver Creek with me next Sunday? There's a spot there I'd like to show you, a waterfall that few people know about. Your uncle could come along as chaperone, of course," he added hastily. The propriety she'd been raised with warred briefly with her desire to spend time with him away from town. "I'd like that," she finally said. "Though I think Uncle Jim trusts you, and he's not much for riding these days." Nathan's eyes widened slightly at the implication, but he nodded. "I promise to have you home well before dark." The following Sunday dawned clear and perfect. Nathan arrived at the mercantile leading 2 horses Pepper and a gentle bay mare he'd borrowed specifically for Lily. He helped her mount, his hands strong and sure at her waist, lingering perhaps a moment longer than strictly necessary. They rode out of town side by side, following the trail that wound through stands of mesquite and cottonwood toward the distant mountains. The Arizona landscape, which had seemed so alien to Lily upon her arrival, now revealed its beauty to her appreciative eyes. Wildflowers dotted the grasslands while red-tailed hawks circled lazily overhead. "It's beautiful here," she said, breathing in the scent of sage and sun-warmed earth. "So different from Boston, but beautiful in its own way." Nathan watched her, something warm in his expression. "It grows on you. When I first came from Texas, I thought I'd never get used to these mountains. Now I can't imagine living anywhere else." They rode for nearly an hour before Nathan led them off the main trail, following a narrower path that wound through a rocky canyon. The sound of water grew louder until suddenly the canyon opened into a hidden valley. A crystal-clear stream tumbled over a series of rock ledges, creating the waterfall he'd promised. "Oh!" Lily exclaimed, enchanted by the unexpected oasis. Cottonwoods and willows surrounded a small pool at the base of the falls, their green leaves shimmering in the dappled sunlight. They dismounted, and Nathan spread a blanket in the shade while Lily explored the edge of the pool, marveling at the clear water and the tiny rainbow created by the spray from the falls. "How did you find this place?" she asked when she returned to where he'd set out a simple picnic. "Tracking a mountain lion that was after the calves," he explained, handing her a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "Never did catch that cat, but I found this spot instead. Been coming here ever since when I need to think." "And what do you think about?" she asked, suddenly bold. His eyes met hers, direct and honest. "Lately, mostly you." The simple admission hung between them, weighted with possibility. Lily's heart pounded against her ribs as Nathan moved closer to her on the blanket. "Lily," he began, his voice rough with emotion, "I know we haven't known each other long, but these past weeks, I've never felt this way about anyone before." "Neither have I," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "It frightens me sometimes how strongly I feel." "Does it?" He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His touch sent shivers across her skin. "Not frightened exactly," she amended. "It's more that everything happened so quickly. We met under such unusual circumstances." "When our hands met in that river," Nathan said softly, "something happened. I can't explain it, but I felt it, like a lightning strike." "I felt it too," she admitted, recalling that moment with perfect clarity despite her peril. "As though something broke open inside me." Nathan's hand cradled her cheek, his thumb gently tracing her lower lip. "May I kiss you, Lily Eastwood?" Instead of answering, she leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened with the intensity of feelings they'd both been harboring. His arms encircled her, pulling her closer, while her hands found their way to his shoulders, then the nape of his neck. When they finally parted, both breathless, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he whispered. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they filled a space in her heart she hadn't realized was empty. "I think I already have," she replied. "Fallen in love with you, that is." Their afternoon at the waterfall became the first of many excursions together. As summer bloomed across the territory, their relationship deepened. Nathan taught Lily to ride Western style rather than side saddle, showed her his favorite places in the countryside around Clifton, and gradually introduced her to the workings of the Rockingham Ranch, where he served as foreman. Lily, in turn, shared her knowledge of books, taught him to dance the more complicated Eastern waltzes, and slowly revealed the dreams she'd harbored even in Boston of a life filled with purpose and adventure, rather than the constrained existence of a society wife. One evening in late July, they sat together on the Mercantile's porch swing, watching as the setting sun painted the distant mountains in shades of purple and gold. Nathan seemed uncharacteristically nervous, fidgeting with his hat brim as they talked. Finally, during a lull in conversation, he turned to face her directly. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you." The seriousness of his tone alarmed her. "What is it? Is something wrong?" He shook his head quickly. "No, nothing like that. It's good news, actually." "At least I hope you'll think so." He took a deep breath. "Mr. Moore is retiring. He's offered to sell me the Rockingham." Lily's eyes widened. "Nathan, that's wonderful, but can you afford such a purchase?" "That's the thing," he said, a smile breaking through his serious expression. "I've been saving every penny since I came to Arizona. Living in the bunkhouse, sending nothing on frivolities. I have enough for a down payment, and Mr. Moore is willing to take payments for the rest over time. He says there's no one he'd rather see take over the ranch." "I'm so happy for you," she said sincerely, squeezing his hand. "You deserve this opportunity." Nathan's expression grew even more intense. "The thing is, Lily, I don't want the ranch unless I can share it with you." Her breath caught as he slid from the swing onto one knee before her. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. "I had this sent from Tucson," he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. "It's not as fine as what you might have had in Boston, but it's beautiful," she interrupted, tears filling her eyes. "Lily Eastwood," Nathan said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "That day at the river changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Every day since then, I've fallen more in love with your courage, your intelligence, your kindness. Will you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" For a moment, Lily thought of the life she'd left behind in Boston, the society functions, the restrictive expectations, the arranged matches based on family connections rather than love. Then she looked at the man kneeling before her, this remarkable man who had literally pulled her from death's grasp and into a life more vibrant than she'd ever dreamed possible. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with joy. "Yes, Nathan Xavier, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to gather her into an embrace that promised a lifetime of security and passion. Their kiss sealed the promise, witnessed only by the first evening stars appearing in the twilight sky. Jim Eastwood's delighted approval of their engagement was immediate and wholehearted. "I had a feeling about you two from the start," he confessed over celebratory glasses of his best whiskey. "Sometimes the heart knows what it wants right away." The town of Clifton embraced the news with similar enthusiasm. The romance of their meeting had already become something of a local legend, and the upcoming wedding provided a welcome excuse for community celebration. They were married in early September, before a crowd that included nearly every resident of Clifton and the surrounding ranches. Lily wore a gown of ivory satin that Martha had helped her create, with wildflowers in her dark hair instead of the traditional orange blossoms. Nathan, standing tall and proud in a new suit, looked at her with such naked adoration as she walked toward him that several of the ladies in attendance dabbed at their eyes. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken in voices that carried clearly through the church. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Nathan's kiss was so tender that Lily felt tears of happiness slipping down her cheeks. The reception at the Rockingham now officially, their ranch lasted well into the evening. Lanterns illuminated the yard where tables groaned with food contributed by neighbors and friends. The dancing continued until midnight, with the bride and groom opening the festivities with a perfect waltz that had everyone applauding. Late that night, when the last guests had departed and they were finally alone in the ranch house that would be their home, Nathan took Lily's hands in his. "Happy, Mrs. Xavier?" he asked softly. "Completely," she assured him, reaching up to trace the beloved contours of his face. "I never imagined when I left Boston that I would find such happiness here. When I pulled you from that river," he said, drawing her closer, "I had no idea I was really saving myself. You've given my life purpose and meaning, Lily." "And you've given me freedom and love," she replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "I think we saved each other." In the years that followed, the Xavier Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship. Nathan's knowledge of cattle was complemented perfectly by Lily's head for business and accounts. They worked side by side, building something greater than either could have achieved alone. Their first child, a son they named James after her uncle, arrived a year after their wedding. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Sarah, named for Nathan's mother. Both children grew strong and confident, raised with their father's integrity and their mother's intelligence. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Lily by taking her back to the waterfall where they had first confessed their love. They picnicked on the same blanket, now somewhat faded but carefully preserved. "You ever regret it?" he asked as they sat beside the pool, watching the play of light through the leaves. "Coming west, marrying a cowboy instead of some Boston gentleman?" Lily laughed, leaning against his shoulder. "Not for a single moment. This life, our life, is everything I never knew I wanted. Even with all the hardships, the droughts, the long hours, the isolation, even then," she assured him, turning to face him fully, "because I face them with you. Because your hand found mine in that river, and nothing has been the same since." Nathan smiled, the lines around his eyes now testament to years of happiness and occasional worry shared together. "I love you, Lily Xavier, more today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "And I love you," she replied, sealing the words with a kiss as passionate as their first. "Always." As the sun began to set, painting the waterfall in golden light, they gathered their belongings and prepared to return home to their children, their ranch, and the life they had built together. The territory around them was changing, growing, as Arizona moved toward statehood. But through all the changes, their love remained constant, as enduring as the mountains that had witnessed their beginning. And sometimes, in quiet moments, they would both recall that singular instant when their hands had met beneath the churning waters of the Gila River, the moment when destiny had quite literally pulled them together, and their hearts had broken open to reveal the love that would define their lives.